2 schoolteachers cracked the Zodiac Killer's first cipher in 20 hours. His second took 51 years. 340 symbols defeated the FBI, cryptanalysts, and thousands of obsessed amateurs across half a century. When a small team finally broke it in 2020, the message held no name, no confession, just a taunt. To understand what those words mean, you have to go back to where the killing started. The night air along Lake Herman Road was quiet on December 20th, 1968. Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, just 16 and 17, parked on a gravel turnout beneath the cold sweep of headlights. At 10:45 in the evening, gunshots broke the silence. Police arrived minutes later to a scene that would haunt Northern California for decades. Betty Lou lay face down outside the car with 5 bullets in her back. David slumped against the passenger door, shot once in the head at close range. A .22 caliber shell casing glinted in the dirt. Officers Cunningham and Miller logged the evidence, canvassed the darkness for witnesses, and found only tire tracks and a half-smoked cigarette. No robbery, no sexual assault, no clear motive. Just sudden, calculated violence. The story might have faded into the files of unsolved, small-town murders. But 7 months later, the first letter arrived. Postmarked July 31st and addressed to the San Francisco Chronicle, it began with a phrase that would become infamous. "This is the Zodiac speaking." The writer claimed credit for the Lake Herman killings, demanded his words be printed, and enclosed a cipher, a puzzle he warned would reveal his identity. The letter's tone was cold, theatrical, and signed with a crosshair symbol. In a single envelope, the killer transformed 2 teenagers' deaths into the opening move of a public game. The Zodiac was not just hunting victims, he was hunting an audience. The first cipher arrived in newsrooms like a dare, 408 symbols, dense and jagged, pressed onto 3 sheets and mailed to the Chronicle, the Examiner, and the Times. The Zodiac demanded his code be printed, promising it would reveal the truth about who he was. Law enforcement and professional cryptographers took their shots, but it was a Vallejo high school math teacher, Donald Harden, and his wife Betty, an English teacher, who cracked the puzzle in a single weekend. They worked through the night, charting frequencies on graph paper, searching for patterns in the chaos. 20 hours later, the message emerged, cold and unblinking. It said, "I like killing people because it is so much fun." The text rambled on, describing humans as slaves for the afterlife, stripping away any hope that the killer was bluffing. The hardened solution splashed across front pages, and for a moment it seemed the Zodiac's games could be beaten. The code had been solved, but the name he promised was missing. Instead, the cipher revealed only a chilling philosophy and a warning that more violence was coming. September 27th, 1969. The sun was low over Lake Berryessa when Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard settled on a quiet patch of grass, far from the nearest road. The calm shattered when a man stepped from behind an oak, his face hidden beneath a black executioner's hood. Cutouts for the eyes, a bib marked with the crossed circle symbol, and a voice that barely rose above a whisper. He carried a pre-written note demanding money and car keys. But this was no simple robbery. Hartnell tried to reason with him. but the man pulled lengths of plastic clothesline from his pocket and ordered them to lie face down. He tied their wrists and ankles with practiced, unhurried movements. Then, without warning, he plunged a knife into Hartnell's back again and again. Cecilia screamed as the blade turned on her. 10 wounds, each delivered with cold precision. The attacker stood, wiped his blade, and walked calmly to Hartnell's car. Using a black marker, he drew a large, crossed circle on the driver's door and wrote the date, the time, and the tally by knife. Hartnell survived, his voice steady but haunted as he described the hood, the symbol, and the killer's flat, emotionless tone. Cecilia died 2 days later. Police documented the symbol on the car door, a signature now burned into every bulletin and headline. The Zodiac had evolved, stepping fully into the role of a masked showman, leaving behind not just bodies, but a theater of fear. October 11th, 1969. A yellow cab idled at the edge of San Francisco's Presidio Heights, its meter still ticking, and its driver slumped lifeless over the wheel. Paul Stein, a 29-year-old, working a late shift, had picked up his last fare just minutes before. A man who directed him to Washington and Cherry, then pulled a gun and fired into the back of Stein's head. The killer wiped down the interior, tore away a square of Stein's blood-soaked shirt, and vanished into the dark. By the time officers Liu and Parker arrived, the street was already crawling with neighbors and school children, drawn to the police tape by the flashing lights and the horror of a murder in their own neighborhood. Within days, a plain envelope landed in the Chronicle's mailroom. Inside was a piece of Stein's shirt, stained and jagged at the edges, folded with surgical care. The accompanying letter was blunt, almost gleeful. The letter read, "I am going to kill a lot of people. I'm going to kill a lot of children in a school bus." The threat was chilling in its specificity. He described shooting out a bus's front tire, picking off the children as they spilled out. The killer wanted the city to panic, and it worked. The Chronicle published the threat, and San Francisco's schoolyards emptied overnight. Parents kept their children home. Police cars shadowed yellow buses along every route. The city's nerves were frayed raw. The shirt fragment was rushed to the San Francisco Police Department, then to the FBI lab in Quantico. Blood type matched, fiber matched. There was no doubt the letter came from the same hands that killed Paul Stein. For the first time, the Zodiac had sent proof, an artifact torn from the body, a trophy to silence any doubters. The killer's words were no longer empty boasts. His threats felt imminent, his reach suddenly everywhere. Investigators faced a new reality. The Zodiac could strike anyone, anywhere, and he was watching the city tremble. The 340-character cipher arrived in November 1969, a block of symbols dense as concrete, with no spaces, no punctuation, and no hint of where to begin. The Zodiac called it his next game. Newspapers ran the grid in full, and the best cryptanalysts at the FBI took their first swing. They failed. The message resisted every trick in the code-breaking arsenal. No simple substitution, no clear pattern, nothing that lined up with English. Amateurs and professionals alike filled notebooks with guesses, drew grids and charts, and tried every permutation they could imagine. Each new theory seemed to promise a breakthrough, only to collapse into nonsense. The FBI report filed in early 1970, described the cipher as yielding no viable plain text. As the years dragged on, the cipher's reputation grew. It became the phantom, a puzzle that haunted codebreakers, always just out of reach. Some claim to have found solutions, but every so-called answer fell apart under scrutiny. The real message, whatever it was, stayed locked behind those 340 symbols. For decades, the cipher sat in evidence files and on bedroom walls, a silent dare from a killer who seemed to know exactly how to keep his secrets. The Zodiac's myth grew with every failed attempt. The cipher became more than a puzzle. It was a monument to frustration, a taunt that outlasted careers and outlived the original investigators. While police chased suspects and the public traded rumors, the 340 sat untouched, a cold, mocking artifact that seemed to say, "You will never find me." 14 years. That is how long the code sat in the hands of 3 people who refused to let it win. David Orenchak, a software engineer in Virginia, first logged on to an internet forum in 2006, looking for anyone obsessed enough to try every angle. Jarl van Eyck in Belgium and Sam Blake in Australia joined him, each bringing their own arsenal, custom code, mathematical models, and a willingness to lose sleep over a killer's riddle. They wrote programs that could churn through billions of possible patterns, hunting for a crack in the wall. For years, every new theory collapsed into gibberish. But late in 2020, a single insight changed everything. What if the cipher was not meant to be read straight across, but diagonally in a staggered path? The team built an algorithm to scan the grid, skipping down 1 row and over 2 columns, wrapping around the edges. Suddenly, the noise began to resolve into English. After more than a decade of dead ends, the code started to speak. The moment felt electric. An answer clawed from the dark, not by government agents or professional cryptanalysts, but by 3 relentless outsiders and a method no one had tried before. The Zodiac's words, hidden for half a century, finally surfaced as plain English. The message was not a confession or a clue, just another performance. He wrote, "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me," the voice as cold and distant as ever. "I am not afraid of the gas chamber, because it will send me to paradise all the sooner." He dismissed the threat of death, and he insisted his victims were serving him as slaves in the afterlife. No apology, no remorse, only a final taunt. "You will never catch me. Good luck." The FBI issued a statement confirming the solution, but the case file stayed open. The cipher revealed nothing about his name, nothing that could close the case. 2 shorter ciphers remain unsolved. The killer's signature still lingers in the archives, his identity as unreachable as ever. Even with the code broken, the mystery endures, and the Zodiac's shadow remains. Tonight, the Zodiac's cipher speaks, but his name remains a blank space. 2 of his codes still defy us. The FBI admits that there is nothing in this message that points to the killer's identity. Nightmares keep breathing, in print, in memory, and in every question that never finds an answer.